The sweet sounds of summer strings are back at Canadian Mennonite University as the Rosamunde Summer String Academy and Festival kicked off on Wednesday, August 13th. Since its debut in 2011, Rosamunde has become a cherished annual highlight for both aspiring string players and the world-class faculty who teach them. Students of all ages gather together for master classes, ensemble work, and private lessons learning from some of the country's finest pedagogues. Alongside the intensive training, Rosamunde presents a faculty concert series that shines a spotlight on its remarkable artists. This year's performances take place on August 17th, 19th, and 21st at CMU. Two of this year's faculty are performing for these concerts: the Juno-winning pianist and composer David Braid and double bassist Travis Harrison, a former Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra member and now chair of the double bass department at the University of Toronto. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about all things Rosamunde, I am joined by David Braid and Travis Hamilton. Hello to you both. So great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
So I got to ask the question. It's been in the news. Air Canada is on strike. Any problems getting here or any problems getting back?
Well, I was talking to customer service after waiting many hours on hold, and then I got through just to find out that we're waiting and seeing if the strike is going to end up canceling my way home. So, fingers crossed, see what happens.
And Travis, how about you?
I'm doing okay so far. Didn't have any problems getting out of here because, again, the strike wasn't happening yet. But, I could think of worse places to get stranded in Winnipeg, so I'm not too worried about it. You got some nice ice cream places out here.
Yes, yeah, for sure. David, you're becoming a regular here in Winnipeg. I know you're very good friends with Elation Pauls, the artistic director of Rosamunde. Can you talk about a little bit about the conversation that took place between the two of you regarding the idea of you attending this year's Rosamunde?
Well, it's nice. First of all, thank you to Elation and, a lot of good friends in Winnipeg, Sean McManus with the MCO, who's invited me a couple times, and Richard Gillis from the Winnipeg Jazz Orchestra. With Elation, I feel very fortunate to have people seeing what I'm bringing to the table musically, which, given my non-standard upbringing, musically speaking, I really am grateful for any opportunity to share. And Winnipeg, I think, is an anomaly in its way that it can appreciate new music, given its history of supporting emerging genres of music historically. So, but with Elation specifically for Rosamunde, she, as you know, made a recording and included some of my work on that and commissioned a piece for it. So I think it's just nice to have a believer. And she said, would you like to become a part of Rosamunde this year? And she said there was a topic in particular that I think she brought me on board to address, which is related to rhythm. But it's rhythm that's, I believe, coming from a tradition slightly outside the European Western tradition, which I think can I complain for like 20 seconds? Nothing to do with Winnipeg.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in working with ensembles around the world, chamber ensembles, I've noticed a pattern in certain areas of the world where I don't need to discuss the rhythm in my work, and other parts of the world where I do. And I'm wondering, what's going on? Why is it one way in one place and not? It's clear that these geographical regions, it's not an issue. And I believe it's something in the pedagogy that doesn't address forms of rhythm that perhaps flow from dance or folk music and so on. So I think the theme of Rosamunde this year is Rosamunde keeps the beat. I might have had some influence on that. So what I'm doing a great service to humanity, I think, in working with young musicians and to get them to understand in their body.
Right.
It's an experiential way of absorbing this particular content, which is one reason why I think it's not normally taught, because it's not an information-based learning. So
Yeah.
In the little bit of time I have,
and for our listeners, a lot of your music is inspired by places like Georgia, Turkey, Kazakhstan, those kinds of places where the rhythms are different than what you would experience here in the West.
In recent years, I've traveled to those places, and I've been really curious about how, these countries that were once on this Silk Road trading route, commerce just didn't flow there. It was also art and culture, including music. And I like the way Western and Eastern music cross-pollinated in these countries and had lives of their own depending on where they happened to stop. So I've learned a lot harmonically, melodically, and rhythmically spending time in those places.
So you're working with the students on rhythm, which is just, it's fundamental, and a good understanding of rhythm is so, so important. But I often think of you as sort of a Renaissance man, a guru. And one of the things that I'm wondering about is, as a composer, are you instilling the kids the importance of composition? Like, it's such an important part of being a musician and expressing yourself, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think in the olden days, Travis can correct me, but I think it was more common hundreds of years ago for, music maker and music interpreter to be the same character. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Whereas now, maybe because of conservatory models, you specialize in composition or you specialize in performance. One thing Rosamunde did, which was different this year, which I think was wonderful, was they had me do a masterclass in, I don't like using the word improvisation because it's, I think it has a bad reputation. But I was working with igniting the music maker within these young string players who were all like brilliant on their own. And it was fantastic. Like, we made music that actually sounded like music, and they were doing it spontaneously just as soon as I put enough constraints so that their creativity could be channeled in a certain way. And I think that's so important because they're using their ears and they're aware of the sound in the room. And that type of skill, I think, would be such an enhancement when they're going to play written music in an ensemble, because we're basically getting their eyes to blank out so that they can use their ears more and react to sound. I think it's wonderful that they included that this year.
It's like the difference in seeing a string quartet play from memory together.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Versus, having their head stuck in the music. It's a delightful thing. And I saw a bit of that yesterday, and I witnessed David's rhythmical class today, and just building this pulse integrity from physical feeling rather than trying to think about it in a verticality of score kind of way, which it's a beautiful thing, and it absolutely enhances our experience as performers to have those skills, I think. So,
Travis, you spent 6 years playing with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. Have you taken part in Rosamunde before, and what drew you to wanting to be on the faculty of Rosamunde?
Well, I've taken part as a listener to Rosamunde before. So when I was here in Winnipeg, if I was around in the summer when it was going on, I'd always come to see the concerts, because Elation, and before her Yuri, the old principal cellist of the Winnipeg Symphony who ran the festival, would always program fantastic concerts. And it's one of the sad things about my job with the Winnipeg Symphony is that I never had time to go see concerts because I was always playing the concerts. So I would always make a point of coming, and I believe that an audience is a participant, whether it's passive participation or not. So yeah, I'd say I participated that way. This is my first time being on the faculty and teaching there. And, when someone like Elation approaches you and asks you if you'd like to come out to Winnipeg and spend some time working with students, I think it's impossible to say no. She is such a lovely, caring, and passionate person that I didn't even ask what my schedule would be, where she'd be putting me up, anything. I didn't have any questions. I just said yes, absolutely, because I knew it was going to be a great time. So that's what drew me, is knowing that I'd have great colleagues around, without a doubt. And then eventually when I got a schedule, I saw, that's going to be true. It's going to be a fantastic time. And so far, day 2, I'm having a blast. So.
What kinds of things are you working on with double bass students, and how many students do you have at Rosamunde?
So we've got 4 double bass students this year, which isn't bad. It's actually, if you think about the breakdown of everything, I think there are 7 cellists, and from there it sort of expands out to be about the size of a symphony orchestra in terms of number of participants. Two of the students are high school age. One of them is sort of younger, Sistema student who I think is actually coming from Sistema Winnipeg, which is wonderful. And one of the students is an older person, I think sort of retirement age. And so we're working on a bunch of different things together. For the high school students, that's sort of the core program of the festival.
Yeah, right.
And so those are the people I'm spending the most of the time with so far. And it's everything from technique on the bass to coaching them in their chamber music and orchestra music to working on solo music with them. And even just, day-to-day skills. That is one of the wonderful things about music education and learning to be a musician is that you actually learn to be, in my opinion, a better human and a better person in general, because there's so much socially and metaphysically and psychologically that you can work on as an artist that transfers to every other part of life. So doing a lot of that. But, at the end of the day, as a bass player, we're working on how to play in tune 5/1 and have a good rhythmic thing. And that's the Coles Notes version of it.
I'm always fascinated by watching double bass players. I think it's a little bit like playing an athletic sport. One of my best friends at grad school was a double bass player. He was a big dude, played bass, but just to be able to navigate the fingerboard, what happens if you're dealing with a student who's smaller in size? How do you make that happen?
Well, it's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, actually, because the stigma, I think of, I'm a 6 foot tall, 200-pound guy, or for metric people, 186 centimeters and 90 kilograms. So, my body is actually sort of what I think a lot of bass makers had in mind 100, 200 years ago when they were making all these fantastic double basses. But these days, the fact is that our technology and methods of creating the instruments, string technology has changed to the point that we're no longer using gut strings that have to be, 2 centimeters off the fingerboard or 4 centimeters off the fingerboard. And so we don't need to wear like leather gloves to press down the strings. And even in the past 20 years, that's changed to the point that a little kid can pick up a bass and actually press the string to the fingerboard, which was not the case when I was a kid, not that long ago. So what that is resulting in is a whole new generation of bass players who are actually virtuosic on their instruments. And it's a really wonderful thing. So I think it's sort of an old school mentality now to say like, oh, you're too small to play the bass. It's more, you might not be the right size for this instrument. Let's find one that actually fits you. And there are actually a lot of quality instruments being made out there these days by modern makers that sound just as good as those ancient instruments. You don't need to buy a fancy Italian bass anymore. In fact, many people, myself included, would argue that those are some of the lower quality in terms of sound instruments out there these days. You can actually objectively measure some things like volume and overtones and resonance. And a lot of the time, the modern instruments on double bass, very similar to viola, are actually coming out on top in those blind tests. So I think there's a lot of room there for people of any size, any shape to actually be able to play the bass because it's such an unstandardized instrument. There's so much room for it to be diverse like that.
Perfect. David, this Sunday night, the first concert of Rosamunde is taking place for the festival. The first half consists of Shostakovich's just excellent 8th-string quartet, and the second half of the concert is all your music, including 2 Manitoba premieres. What can you tell us about the piece Semi and 5 Kazakh Impressions?
All right. Well, 5 Kazakh Impressions, since you mentioned that part of the world earlier, and I mentioned how it's been a fascination. It was a commission for a wonderful string quartet in Kazakhstan called the Kazakh State String Quartet. And these guys are the sweetest and the great players, super dedicated. It's all they do is play string quartet. And in 2022, Canada celebrated the 30th year anniversary of diplomatic relations. The fall of the USSR, so Canada started, which I was lucky to be caught up in diplomatic outreach program, I guess we could say. And so I went to a bunch of those countries, but going to Kazakhstan was my first time there, and it was definitely a highlight. And I was speaking to the leader, who's the cellist, and he said we would love to commission a work for the series of concerts, the tour we did. And so they sent me 5 folk songs which they said, could you build some string quartet using these motifs? So I studied the folk songs, and then I asked them to send me as much music that they felt comfortable sharing of traditional instruments. And one instrument I really took to is called the dombra. And some people make the argument that the old dombra eventually became the violin as it evolved over time. And there's some things that are similar and some things that are quite different. So I studied a bunch of music from this particular instrument. And two of the movements, my piece is called 5 Kazakh Impressions. Each impression is based on one folk song. And anyway, so they were very happy with the outcome. And I have to say that I was, a little concerned, as we're sensitive to, when we're dealing with another culture's music, and I'm not from that culture's, we want to try and do the right thing and be sensitive. However, I have to say that they were thrilled with the result, and the audience, I was sort of blown away with some of the response that I got, from the Kazakh speak Kazakh, the language, and then Russian as their second language. Somewhere down there is English, and even, not their first or second language, the way they expressed themselves so clearly in their appreciation for the work was really tremendously touching. And basically the message was, we love our folk music, but we also love Western classical music, and we felt that the way you combine them was so special that, in fact, I had an invitation to meet this very famous folk musician. They had a special dinner where the two of us could meet, and they sort of made a plan that I would go and spend a few weeks with this musician so I could learn more, so I could create more works making this combination, because they were inspired by the outcome. So I'm happy to have a chance to share something about Kazakhstan, because the movie Borat doesn't at all like it's nothing to do with that country. It's such a tragedy. It's the sweetest, warmest people that I've ever met, and the artistic community, especially in classical music, is so thriving. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy about the second piece, Semi. It's not much really to say about it. It could be pronounced semi. It could also be pronounced semi. If you pronounce it semi, it's a reference to a Turkish rhythm that I use in that piece. If you pronounce it semi, the meaning behind there, it's not to get too dramatic, but it was written at a time where, let's say, when you're moving from the spring of your life to the summer of your life, when you come to the sort of realization that, my aspirations of youth, you start to realize, well, things change, things won't work the way that you hope that they work. How else could you describe it? Change is inevitable, and we have to come to this point. Are we going to cling on to what we thought things should be, or do we adapt? And people who have inspired me, including an elder friend who just passed away at almost 101, Phil Nimmons. His thing was embrace change, laughter, this sort of thing. So Phil was in this period of realization. Phil was sort of another way of a guiding light, you could say. Yeah. So Semi is just sort of about confronting that sort of reality as we age. Things change, and that was, I guess you could say that's something inside the mood of that particular piece.
Amazing. And then Travis, on Thursday, the 21st, you're performing with Gwen and Carl, Haydn Trio No. 3 from the London Trios. I think I've got a recording of this piece with flute, violin, and cello. Has it been adapted for double bass?
Well, I believe the intention is 2 flutes and a cello.
Okay.
And I've heard all sorts of different versions of that. But, in Haydn's time, I don't think that a lot of those composers really cared about who was playing their music. And Brahms, came many years after Haydn, but great example of that. He'd write all these sonatas, and his father played the clarinet, so he'd make a violin sonata version for clarinet. He'd make a cello sonata version for violin. All these things. There's a great movie, Master and Commander, and a series of books, if you read those. Yeah. Such a wonderful window into the music-making ideal of that time, the 1700s and 1800s, where no one cared what instrument it was on. They just made it so that people could have fun together. So Gwen and Carl, of course, Gwen Hobig, the now, I think, resigning or retiring concertmaster of the Winnipeg Symphony, and Carl Stobie, who was her stand partner of many years and stepping into that concertmaster role. They're old colleagues of mine. And I'm approaching this whole thing from the perspective of just getting together with two old friends and making music together and having fun. So from a practical standpoint, you can find the music on IMSLP. There are two clefs that are in treble clef and one clef that's in bass clef.
Yeah.
So I'm playing the one in bass clef. As a double bassist interpreting that, there are some things that I'm going to take into the same octave that the cello would play it in, just to make a little bit more sense in terms of the voicing, and other things that I think will really benefit from having that low register down there. That's something I do a lot. That Shostakovich string quartet number 8, by the way, like there's a string orchestra version of that, the Opus 110 and Opus 110A, Shostakovich calls it. And I did that twice this past year with different groups, and we just find different ways for the bass to fit in and just sort of enhance the experience, I think, for the listener. So that's sort of the perspective we're going for, and it should be a lot of fun.
Amazing. It's been so great. I'll wrap up the conversation by asking what the two of you are looking forward to most over the next several days for Rosamunde. David, I'll start with you.
Well, it's wonderful to meet young musicians who are so hungry to learn and so smart. And it's almost, this surprised me because I didn't expect this, because I haven't experienced it in a long time. It's as if some of the people that I've met, it's as if you're looking into, there's an old artist character in them, and it's starting to emerge. And I just sense it as soon as they answer the first question. I can see it in their eyes that there's a deep soul there, and it wants to engage in the pursuit of lifelong learning, which hopefully Travis and I and the rest of the faculty were able to pass some things along in that lifelong journey. And it's really touching. And I think it's fair to speak for both of us that we just wish to help out and make things easier for the people who want to come and learn from us. And when you feel that when we're willing to give, you feel an equality with the people wanting to receive. It's just a beautiful symbiotic kind of relationship. So I'm looking forward to just experiencing that a lot, because it makes me have hope for the future of music in a sense, because we wonder, music industry is always changing. We can't predict it. So, but when you meet the next generation and they have that same hunger that you remember, that you, or maybe recognize in yourself, it's a wonderful, empowering experience. So I'm looking forward to enjoying more of that.
Travis, how about you?
Absolutely. I'll echo that. And, this is day 2 of the festival, and one of the great pleasures that I have, I'm not sure if you're doing this as well, David, is coaching chamber music. And I love chamber music. Bass players, we typically play in orchestra a lot. But I've been making my career lately of teaching and playing chamber music, and that's how I pay my bills, and I love it. And so having the opportunity to coach chamber music with young people and old people. So I'm coaching a group of young people. Our first thing was today, they're doing a Purcell, Henry Purcell, so 1600s, early 1700s composer. And they got together for the first time today, and we read through that music together. And just seeing them come out of their shells socially, they're meeting each other for the first time and playing their instruments together for the first time, and seeing how they sort of open up with their personalities towards each other and accept ideas and listen and react to what each other are doing. It's a very special thing. So the process of going through that, it's something I look forward to every day, with, of course, the big payoff being the concert at the end. But the journey to get there is wonderful. And it's the same thing with the older folks as well. I think they call it the Rosamunde ads.
Yeah, that's right.
Part of the festival, I'm going to be rushing back after this to coach a Haydn Opus 74 number 5 quartet. And as a bass player, I don't get to play Haydn string quartets, but for me, it's like some of the best music out there. Yeah. I love listening to Haydn string quartets. And so being able to coach this group of people who, it's 2 violins, a viola, and actually a double bassist as well, who's playing the cello part, and again, doing these things with octave transpositions to make it work. They're lovely, lovely people that I've met so far. And just seeing the way that they react to different ideas and different sort of thoughts about how the music can live and breathe. And something I love to do with them is give different ideas about phrasing and different ideas about articulation and dynamics and things that will make it a more engaging and more fun sort of thing that they're doing, rather than just sitting in the notes. And so it's not one moment really that I'm looking forward to. It's really just this journey of development and seeing where we can push things and what we can learn from each other doing that, having those different perspectives and all of us learning together and moving forward with it. It's a really special thing that we get to do in music. So I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Wonderful. David and Travis, this has been really great having you both here. All the best for Rosamunde in the next several days. Thanks so much for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today.
Thanks, Chris.
Pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having us.